Hello everyone. In this short tutorial, I will be covering the UDIM workflow. This video will cover how to set up UDIMs in Maya, how UDIMs work with texturing in Substance Painter, and finally how to enable the use of virtual textures inside of Unreal Engine, and import and use the UDIM textures inside a shader. So what are UDIMs, and why should you care about them? I'm going to be brief here, but UDIMs are essentially an automatic UV offset system that assigns images to a specific UV tile. This allows you to use multiple lower resolution texture maps for the surfaces of your model, while producing a higher overall resolution as a result. UDIMs are an enhancement to the standard UV mapping and texturing workflow. To illustrate this, I have placed a fully UV'd model inside of Maya. This model was created by Joseph Janssen, and I have included a link to his portfolio post of this asset. Joe is doing me a huge favor by sharing this awesome Titanfall-inspired mech with us for the tutorial, so follow that link and show him some love. Back to the tutorial. I have two of Joe's models inside Maya. This one has the same UV shells except it is using the standard 1-to-1 UV mapping space. This one on the right is utilizing UDIMs, and as you can see by the checkered map on the model, using UDIMs is an absolute game changer for your 3D workflow. This workflow allows us to have 10 times the resolution for our game assets. On to the tutorial. We will begin this process in Maya. Ideally, you have already created the UV maps for your model, and once you have them all unfolded and straightened, you would normally want to organize your UVs into the standard 1-to-1 space. But with UDIMs, we can divide different parts of our mesh into corresponding UV spaces. This allows us to utilize more than just one UV coordinate space, which will allow us to maximize our texture resolution. With this character, Joe divided each of the mesh's body parts into their own respective UV coordinates, so each limb gets its own 1-to-1 space. I believe this is a good way to go about it for your models as well. One thing you need to keep in mind with this workflow is that you need to stay positive. What I mean is that on the actual UV graph, you need to keep your UV shells within the positive X and Y space on the graph. Obviously, you can go an infinite amount of tiles in this direction, just keep it positive. Here are a few examples of meshes that I have set up using the UDIM workflow and how I divided them up. Once you have arranged your UDIMs, we can export the mesh and move right into Substance Painter. Inside Substance Painter, there's only one thing you need to do if you want to use the UDIM workflow. Load your mesh from Maya, and then inside the import option, select Use UV Tile Workflow, and just leave Preserve UV Workflow checked. That's it. Now just bake, and then texture your asset as you normally would. Thanks again to Joe for letting me use his model and textures. It's a great asset. Okay, so our asset is textured and we are ready to export our textures and move into Unreal Engine. This is where we will set up the final shaders and presentation. To export your textures, go to File, Export Textures, and set a file destination. Since our final destination is Unreal, we want to set the output template to Unreal Engine 4 Packed. Since I really want to show off this model, I'm going to set the texture size to 4K. Now I'm going to tab over to the Output Template section so I can name my textures. In order to shorten the names here, I would like to use my own naming conventions for the textures, and you can use yours as well, but keep in mind that you need to leave the UDIM descriptor at the end. For my case, my texture will be named T_QK_mech_map_type_UDIM, and so on. Once you have named your textures, go over to the List Export tabs and make sure that all of your texture exports are set. You should see the name of each texture followed by a number. That number is the UDIM space. Go ahead and export your textures and then boot up Unreal Engine. Once we have UE4 open, the first thing we need to do is enable virtual texture support. This is done in the project settings, so just navigate to the top left corner of the editor and select Edit, then go down to Project Settings and open them up. Up at the top, we click on All Settings and then type in Virtual Texture Support. Just click the little box and restart the editor. Once Unreal is open again, we can import our model. I will drag the low poly export from Maya and place it in its own folder. I'm going to create a new material for the mech, and then I can drag in the textures. Navigate to where you exported the textures from Substance Painter. Once you have found them, you need to look at the names. For Unreal, we only need to import the textures with the .1001 UDIM number. The rest we can leave in the folder. Next, we want to select the material we created earlier and drag it into our mech. Then open it up. Since our ambient occlusion, metallic, and roughness maps were channel packed by Substance, we can plug those in first. They go as follows. AO is red, so plug that into ambient occlusion. Roughness is green, and finally metallic is blue. Then plug in your normal map and base color. If your asset has an emissive channel, we can create a multiply node. Do that by pressing M and clicking anywhere on the graph. Then we want to create a scalar parameter by clicking and pressing S. And go ahead and name that emissive intensity and give it a value of 100 or whatever you want. Now we can press apply and save the material. Go ahead and right-click on that same material and create a material instance. Open it up and then select your model. Inside your material instance, navigate down to the lower right corner and select a little teapot. Your model will appear and you can mess with the settings to your heart's content. I really hope you found this tutorial helpful, and I urge you to like this video. Please share it with someone who might need help with UDIMs, and feel free to check out any of my other asset creation tutorials. I have a really great one on fixing baking overlap issues. If you'd like to try your hand at VR development, I have 2 great tutorials for getting started with that as well. Thank you so much for watching.